So welcome everybody who's joining us today to our regular weekly wellbeing lunch. And we're almost at the bank holiday, which I think everyone's very excited about. So, and the weather's also nice in the UK, in Hastings. It's a beautiful day today. So for those of you that don't know me, I think probably most people on the call do. I don't know who we've got on today because I can't see, but if you don't know me, my name's Emma Bridger and I am founder and MD of People Lab, and we are specialists in engagement and experience. I won't go on about that because it's not about sales today, it's all about well-being. So I'm joined by Justin, who's my co-host. So Justin, introduce yourself.
Okay. Hello again. So likewise, if you know me, you know me. If you don't, I'm Justin McCarran and I am a resilience coach. And my input in these calls is to offer a little bit of extra insight and support specifically around the area of resilience. There you
Awesome.
go.
Thanks, Justin. And we've got Katie on today as well, who is my wonderful colleague at People Lab, and she'll be manning the chat. So if you've got any questions as we go through, feel free to put them in there. Also, if you've got any good book recommendations, we're talking about good stuff to watch over the weekend. So any good Netflix recommendations? We're just chatting about the new Beastie Boys documentary and the Quincy Jones documentary, Justin's recommendations. So put them in there because it's always good to share and collaborate on things that aren't just work related. So today we're going to talk about relationships. So we introduced this model of well-being, I think it was last week, which is the Perma model of well-being from the granddaddy of positive psychology, Martin Seligman. And he kind of has this approach framework for understanding well-being. We're kind of taking each element each week. So it'll last us kind of 5 weeks in total because there are 5 elements. That's how it works. Last week we talked about achievement and we went over the role of growth mindset and achievement. And this week I thought we'd look at relationships, which is a really interesting area because it's a lot less tangible than the other areas really. Because I think, you know, all of us have both good and bad relationships in our lives. And there's a whole load of stuff that goes along with that and a whole load of self-awareness we need to work on to really kind of get the relationships that we want in our lives. So, I'm going to share my screen. I've done a few slides, not as many this week, you'll be glad to know. But I like a few slides because I want to make sure that you've got something that you can take away and refer back to. So Justin, I know this is kind of one of your big areas of interest, isn't it? The relationship side of things. Guess you're on mute. You're on mute, Justin.
As I was saying, yes, so in terms of relationships, they are really, really important when we talk about resilience. So one of the three key areas for me in my work at resilience is always relationships, or the terminology we use is social support, so your support network. So I'll be chipping in quite a lot this week, I think, Ems, in terms of offering an additional supportive angle from the resilience point of view about the importance of relationships.
Fab, thank you. So I said relationships is the R in Perma essentially. So we're going to delve into it a little bit. Just as a reminder, this is the Perma model first kind of shared by Martin Seligman. So last week we did accomplishments, stroke achievements, talked about growth mindset. Today it's all about relationships, and next week's going to be about engagement, which is obviously one of our kind of areas of passion and focus. So we have loads to say on that. Relationships though, let's start by talking about that this week. I've got a little poll for you to start off with, so I'll stop sharing the screen for a sec while we do that. Katie's going to launch. So I'm interested to find out how you describe, you know, your view on your relationships in your life. Are you kind of at a number 5, which is, yeah, pretty happy with my relationships, be it with my, you know, my friends, my family, my close friends, my acquaintances, you know, if you've got kids, your kids, if you have a partner, your partner. Are you kind of a number 5, pretty happy with where things are at, or are you number 1, which is, I need to do some serious work on my relationship? So have a go at filling that in. I'll put my response there. As ever, there's no right answer to this. Just wanted to get a sense of where people are at.
Okay, I think I'm going to close that one.
Okay, that's good. That's good. the majority of people, almost half, are pretty happy, and then we got a few at 4 and a few at 3. So nobody at 1 or 2, which is always a good sign. So let's close that, and I'll go back to sharing. And we can talk through, you know, some thoughts on if you do want to improve your relationships in your life, how you might go about doing that. So from a psychological point of view, there's no surprise here. Again, so much of psychology says every week is it's really common sense, but there's no surprise that having what we call positive relationships, so the emphasis is on positive here because we all have relationships, good, bad and ugly in our lives, but it's positive relationships that really contribute significantly to our well-being, and it's an absolute no-brainer, right? This is obvious stuff. So from an evolutionary psychology point of view, clearly isolation was not a good thing. If we're isolated from our tribe, our gang, our pack, our group, we had, you know, less chance of surviving. So we needed relationships from an evolutionary psychology point of view to survive. If we could be, you know, in with you know, a group of people and have good, strong relationships, we are more likely to survive. And the better those relationships, the higher the hierarchy we would be, and the more likely we would have access to resources. So it makes sense from an evolutionary psychological viewpoint that relationships are important. And what's really interesting is that we've discovered over more recent years that the opposite of positive relationships, if we talk about relationships in terms of you know, social interaction versus isolation, we've found that isolation actually triggers pain points, pain receptors in our brains. It actually hurts us if we're socially isolated. And it's not even just the physical act of being socially isolated, it's also the thought or the risk of being socially isolated triggers those pain responses. And I put this little image up here, which some of you may recognize, some of you may not, but if you've seen the film Castaway with Tom Hanks, you know, he finds this ball on the island where he's on his own, he's completely socially isolated, and he kind of almost creates you know, this ball becomes a person to keep him company, and he calls it Wilson. And, you know, a lot of the movie is about, you know, how this kind of inanimate object kind of helps him get through this terribly isolating experience. Even just the idea of having a friend or somebody, you know, sometimes can help us get through something. So just thought it was a nice little illustration of how much we crave connections and how much we crave relationships. And without them, you know, things are tough. Any comments on that, Justin, before I carry on?
Yeah, I think this is really, really key. So when we talk about resilience, we tend to have this image of, you know, a person. I think I've mentioned this on the call already. It's a counterintuitive thing about resilience. We tend to have a picture of a person alone on the mountaintop, you know, surviving the elements, blasting them, like rooted like an oak tree in the earth. And actually, the opposite is true. So what all of the studies show us is that resilient people are people who have social support. So they have support networks, and they find those support networks wherever they can. And so far from being a solo activity or a solo quality, resilient people are connected, intrinsically connected with other people, in that they both offer support for the people and also, crucially, receive support. So our natural state, as Emma has been saying, is to be connected. We are inherently social creatures, and it's a very interesting time at the moment for us to think a little bit about the effect that being denied that contact with other humans is having. And one of the things myself and Emma have been talking about is how different the experience is for someone who is in lockdown on their own with no partner, no family, no pet. That's an intrinsically a different experience, and a more difficult experience in some respects than someone who is, for instance, like me, in lockdown with both a partner and children and a pet. So lots of contact. So, you know, I'll have different challenges. But it's really, it's an absolutely fundamental need for us to be connected and to feel that connection also physically. You know, there's all this amazing research about the neurohormones released through hugging, oxytocin, and that sense of belonging is really important for us. So of all of the things that we're facing, this sense of being disconnected and isolated from others is one of the trickiest things, I think, for us all to navigate at the moment.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Actually, there was a study, wasn't there, about hugging that came out. I don't know when it was, but it was fairly recent. And I've talked before about my my autistic son, who's wonderful, the biggest hugger in the world. And I showed him the research, and I make him hug me. I think it's like 10 seconds or something. And I give him a hug, and we try back. I said, no, we have to do it for 10 seconds. So I make him hug me. We talk for the 10 seconds, and then he let's go, because it's really good for you, Harry. And I've showed him the science, kind of helped him. So so we have to hug for 10 seconds, I think it is. Okay.
I love that.
So I feel like I'm over the weeks of doing these wellbeing lunches, I feel like I'm going over the sort of all the kind of really dodgy, ethically, ethically questionable studies from the world of psychology, because we've talked about the Stanford Prison Experiment, and now we're going on to another famous one, which is the Harlow wire monkey experiment, which you may be familiar with, but I thought it was an interesting one to share. So back in the day, when psychologists didn't have ethic committees, they had to put everything past. They could just kind of do what they wanted. Did some really interesting studies, and we'll try and get through all of them actually by the time we finish these up. I'll try and work around all the dodgy experiments psychologists did back in the 60s. But this is a really famous experiment where they looked at Harry Harlow wanted to kind of research this whole area of like love, connection, attachment, and he basically, this is really sad, but he took away little baby rhesus monkeys from their parents when they were kind of a few days old, and put them with surrogate wire monkey mothers. And there were two types in the initial experiments. There was the just a completely wire monkey mother with nothing, like no softness, no terry. They used terry toweling to kind of make this one a little bit cuddlier. Nothing like that, just completely wire. And this wire monkey mother fed the babies, and they had other surrogate mothers who were with these ones here, who don't look that much like monkeys, but who had some terry toweling on them. And they found that every single time that the baby rhesus monkeys would want to prioritize their time with the terry toweling monkey mother, because they wanted to have a cuddle and to feel nice. It goes back to that hugging thing you talked about, Justin. And they wouldn't want to have much time or much to do with the feeding mother. And that sounds like really obvious, but back in the day, think about perhaps the way our parents, my age, I'm nearly 50, perhaps the way my parents were raised, and their generation before them, and sort of Victorians, there was this whole idea that like love and affection were kind of like weaknesses and not good. And this initial work kind of kickstarted a whole host of research around attachment, relationships, bonds, social interaction, and kind of has really changed the way that we parent, and the way that kids are treated if they're if they are separated from parents early on. They go through traumas, etc. So I thought it was an interesting kind of study to share with you about how we'd rather be with someone and have a cuddle than we would eat in this situation. So I think it's interesting just to kind of think about that. But some of you might be familiar with that, some of you might not. But again, back in the day when we could kind of do dodgy experiments in psychology. So again, whole overwhelming body of evidence, but some work done recently by Brigham Young University in the States. They did a meta-analysis, which is essentially looking at like loads of studies that have been done and putting them all together, doing a big data piece on them. As they looked at they did a meta-analysis of studies that involved 3.4 million participants. And they found that loneliness is linked with a whole range of kind of factors that negatively impact our mortality. The headline is that you have about a 30% higher risk of early death if you're lonely. And they found, for example, also that loneliness is linked to, it has the same effect on our health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, as being obese. It's a whole range of things. I think it was a really kind of a wow, sit and take notice piece of research that says, yes, there's some stuff we need to do for our health that's obvious, but also working on our social interactions and our relationships is as important as all the other kind of stuff we do for our health. Any thoughts on that one, Justin? Did you come across that study?
Yeah, well, it's the sort of it's the partner study to the other famous piece of research published by Robert Waldinger, the Harvard one, which showed that it was the longest study conducted over 80 years, tracking people from the Great Depression, 1938, up until 2018. And they, without without any shadow of a doubt, relationships, the quality of your relationships was the key indicator the whole way through your life of how happy you were going to be. Simple as. And that goes across cultures, social demographics, human beings. It's the most important thing for us. It's relationships. It's the quality of our relationships, and that's it. And happy relationships equals happy life. Simple.
Yeah,
and like you say, the partnership that is unhappy relationships or lack of relationships equals unhappiness and all of those negative emotions and the health complications as well. It's really, really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an interesting area of study, and there are a whole range of studies out there, and I've just kind of given a few sort of headlines here, but you know, if you're interested, you want to Google it, there are, you know, hundreds and thousands of studies that show that, you know, the social connections that we have impact pretty much every area of our life. So we find that, you know, as you said, Justin, people with closer relationships are healthier, are more optimistic about the future. The aging one is really interesting because there's a whole heap of work done around what we call successful aging and positive aging, and found that you know, people kind of as they age and go to kind of, you know, older age, sort of strength and strength of connections they have, but also there's interesting work around the different types of connections they have. So kind of a range of different types of social connections, also important, shows that it's sort of linked to happiness, but also things like resistance to infectious disease. So your social connections makes you less likely to be at risk of infectious disease when you get older. So there's a whole heap of really interesting research around this. Recovery from mental illness, again, this is an obvious one, but people who recover quicker and more effectively from mental illness always cite family and friends as well the most important part of their recovery. And from a workplace perspective, you might be familiar with the work of Gallup. They were the ones that kind of really popularized this idea of connections at work, links to engagement, links to productivity and performance. So hence the question, the controversial question, the Gallup survey, I have a best friend at work. That's why that's included there. And their work's kind of evolved since then. And now they sort of say, actually, you don't have to have a best friend at work, but actually friendships at work per se are really important to how you feel about work and how you perform at work. And it's obvious stuff, but it's nice to have the science to back it up. So this stuff is really important. So what I thought I'd do is, you know, we talk about this idea of positive relationships because we all have relationships, and some of them are not great, some of them are brilliant. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time reflecting on what you think makes a relationship good. And we haven't got loads of people on the call today. So perhaps if we just stay in one group and get people, if you want to unmute yourselves to share your thoughts on that, or if you want to put some thoughts in the chat, go back to that. So what do you think is it that makes a relationship good? Justin, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on that? How do you answer that question?
Oh, well, relationships, as you've alluded to, have a number of different kind of functions. So when I talk about relationships in my work, I talk about thinking about three areas that you will have a support network in. And those three areas tend to be, well, broadly speaking, work or personal life. But within that, it's friends, family, and colleagues. So those are the three areas. And most people who are on the call now will be able to very quickly do a calculation and go, oh yeah, family is really important for me. You know, maybe you've got your own family, maybe you've got siblings that live nearby, you know, maybe you've got parents, or maybe family is just not a thing for you, you know, plenty of people, but you will probably have connections, friends, a social network through friends. Or maybe you're very connected with your pals at work. I mean, I know that's true for my brother. He lives by himself. He doesn't have a relationship. He lives far away from the rest of us, but his connections are all work. He has a really, really healthy social life at work. So that's where he would be drawing a lot of his connections for. Whereas for me, my connections are much more about family because I've got family. But it's an interesting thing to think about is, who are the people who are in your support network and what roles do they play, if you like? And, you know, you'll have different friends. but so there's no perfect relationship. It's a long way of me answering your question. But the example I always give is like, you know, I have a friend he was my best man years ago, and he's no great philosopher, but he is funny, you know, and he knows me really well. So if ever he's the right person for me to call sometimes, because he'll just make a really inappropriate joke and just, you know, really lower the bar as well about stuff. But sometimes that's really what you need in life, isn't it? But then there are other friends who I will call if I need a proper heart to heart, or if I need some advice. There'll be different people. So I think that's the thing of those, and they're never fixed, those relationships, but they have a general flavor, don't they? And it's nice to have a variety of those in your life, and you offer different levels of support for different people. So but really, you know, we're only really capable of having a tiny handful of close relationships, really two or three really properly close relationships. So yeah, that's my thoughts on not quite answering your question by giving you other information.
No, it's definitely true. You have different friends for different reasons, and it's I quite often get into debates with my friends around if you have a partner, whether they should or shouldn't be your best friend. And my partner's absolutely not my best friend at all. We're married, we've been together for 17 years, but I would never call him my best friend. And other people go, oh, wow, what, my partner's absolutely my best friend. And I'm like, I don't want him to be my friend. I want him to be my partner, you know. And it's interesting how, and there's no right answer, of course. It's just whatever works for you, isn't it? But I think there are some things that I think everybody would say trust. You've got to trust your friends. I think trust is absolutely, for me, you know, got to be there. And for me, you know, honesty as well. Humor for me is important, not with everybody. Oh, we've got a comment here, Helen. Have a look. Good relationship.
Helen, that's what I meant to say, Helen. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, mutual respect. I think that's a really good point, Helen, because I'm kind of going to jump on a little bit here, but it's that mutuality, isn't it? It's got to be two-way, because I think where relationships become more toxic or more unhelpful is where it's either, you know, you're giving but not getting a lot back, or likewise, you know, someone's giving a lot to you and you're not, you know what I mean. Either way, I think it starts to become toxic, and part of our sort of journey through our relationship landscape is to learn to recognize, and it's something definitely that I've got much better at as I've got older, to think actually this relationship isn't good for me. Whereas when I was younger, part of my personality is I like to be liked by everybody. And I always used to see it always as a challenge. If someone didn't like me, I was like, I'm going to make you like me, which is very unhealthy. And I wouldn't do that now. I'd be like, that's fine. I don't mind that. I'm cool with that, you know. So I think that's a really good point. This two-way, you know, mutuality, I think is really important.
Yeah.
Anyone
I think one of the things I'd add into that list as well is, well, you mentioned sense of humor, Emma, and I think that's really key. Is, you know, sometimes in our discussions, it's very easy for us to get caught up into kind of describing the ideal. And, you know, we have to remember that we're all human. And so we'll screw up, you know, we'll let people down. We will probably lie to even our closest friends. You know, we will, and other people will do that to us. And as long as those things are within a sort of a reasonable area, then there's a bit of give and take as well. There's a little bit, you know, I think we can get obsessed about, you know, trust and respect is one of those things that the minute you hold it too tightly, it falls apart. So, but that's a sense that you have in a good relationship, that, you know, there's a little bit of ebb and flow, and you don't take offense. You know, if someone says the wrong thing, or someone misses your birthday, or, you know, we're humans, we've got other lives. So also, I think that's partly a key of a good relationship, is just allowing it to be what it is and not try and make it something that it isn't. Yeah.
And actually, this is really cheesy, right? But years ago, it's kind of in the realms of sort of MBTI type horoscopy sort of stuff. I like MBTI, by the way, I love it. But someone recommended me the Languages of Love book, which is about how people show, not as in romantic love, but their affection for you. And it really resonated with me, because I am the person, so basically it sort of says there's different ways people show their love for you. So some people are really good at giving gifts and remembering your birthday. I am not one of those people. If I'm friends with the sort of person that expects me to remember their birthday and send them a card and a present, I will send them a card and a present. It'll probably be 2 weeks late, but it'll be very thoughtful. But I'm never going to be that friend. But what I'm good at is giving people time, for example. It sort of says there's different ways that people express their their love for you, and it's just really helpful to say, oh, it isn't that you don't care about me, it's just that that's not what you're good at. And I think it just really helped me. I thought it was really interesting, and I sort of explained to people, this is how I will show my affection to you. And I can do the other stuff, but I'm not very good at it, and it zaps my energy. And I'm not very reliable at the other stuff, but this is the stuff that I'm really good at. You phone me at 3 a.m. and say, I need you, I'm there, whereas I probably forget your birthday, but Facebook is really helpful for that. So I just thought that was a good one to mention. A bit cheesy, but I liked it. Just going to go back to the slides for a sec then.
Emma, just to jump in there, there's been some recent research which is a slightly different variation of the 7 love languages, which is brilliant. I agree. I mean, if you can get through the slightly, for me, cheesy, the American evangelical nature of it, the actual content is great. So I'd probably say don't read the book, just Google a summary of it. But the other thing is this notion of different types of brain as well. So we'll post, I don't want to hold up the conversation now, but I think we should post, when we send resources around, Katie, we can send us some really nice research into people's brains working in slightly different ways as well, and that the way in which we communicate and nurture relationships, it's helpful to be thinking a little bit about sometimes the ways in which we express things aren't going to land neurologically for those other people as well. So it's another version of, we're back to our emotional intelligence, self-awareness, understanding others, and the ability to manage that. But I just wanted to jump in because it's partly to do with heart and partly to do with head, I think. Yeah,
no, it's a really good point. Yeah, we'll get that sent round. And so just kind of building on this, I'm not going to read through all these because they're really obvious, but I am going to make the point about the first one. I think it goes back, it links to your emotional intelligence, your EQ. We talked about that a few weeks ago. It's that self-awareness of what do I need in a relationship. And as Justice said, we all have different relationships for different reasons. We have that person that, it's great to go out and have a laugh with, but might never be a really deep friend. And that person who, we really connect with on a very, very deep level. We have different relationship needs, different friends for different reasons. And there's that. Family is a really interesting one because there's a whole kind of, all the stuff that comes along with family, and that kind of sense of duty and obligation that maybe sometimes goes against what we actually need from the relationship with our family. And I think, it's helpful to do some work on your own self-awareness around what you really need from relationships to be able to express that. So it links back into the EQ stuff we talked about a few weeks ago. So I put some others there, and I've actually written a blog about this that'll be coming out next week, that kind of goes into these a little bit more. But some obvious points here, and something that I've got better at as I've got older is that managing boundaries around relationships. So that work friend that maybe takes, I used to be kind of in-house and have a big team. Perhaps some of the work friends that started to sort of blur some of the boundaries that I thought were there, and I've kind of learned by my mistakes with that. And I mean, avoiding gossip, everyone likes to gossip. I'm not saying, don't gossip, but I think if your relationships are only based on, bitching about other people, there's just a little bit of a red flag there. But what else, think about what else, you need to build positive relationships. So I said, I'm not going to go through them all in detail, but anything there, Justin, that you think you'd add to that list, or I want to pick up on one of those on the list there, which is appreciation, which is, if all looking at all of those things, if you wanted to do something now to build your relationships and improve them, the one thing you can do is express your appreciation for someone. So there's a little exercise that I like to share that I'll tell you about it now, and if you fancy doing it, you can do it. The exercise is very simple. It's to think about one person in your support networks. So one person who is on your side, who's in your team, that you feel that you have
you appreciate the relationship that you have with them. And what you do, this is a great exercise because it's a double whammy, because it works on building your gratitude, which kicks in and builds your positive outlook. And it also works on strengthening your relationships. So it's think about a person and think about something that they did or something that they do. So what is it about them that you're going to appreciate? So there's two parts to this. So one is being able to identify what that quality is. So if you think about my friend who takes a piss, that would be the thing. I would be saying to him, you know, listen, I want to say thank you for always being ready to crack an inappropriate joke and poke a hole in my self-pity with your filthy sense of humor. So that's the specific thing I want to thank him for. But the second part is just as important. And so the important is what does that give to you? What needs does that fulfill for you? Or what does that offer? What emotion does that generate in you? So not only what did they do or what do they do, but why does that matter to you? Why is that important? What's the effect it has on you? You know, so for me, I don't know, it might be something like it makes me feel like I'm not alone and I've got support out there, and that actually I have got what it takes to work through the situation that I'm in, and I'm just like everyone else, you know, so that makes me feel like a normal human being and not a weirdo, whatever it is. So that's a little exercise you can do, is you can choose a person in your support network, think about what it is that they do or a specific thing that they've done, and think about what that adds to you. What does that give to you? What do you benefit? What's the benefit for you? What need does it address? So really important is that you are specific about what they did and also specific about the effect it has on you. Because what we're very good at is general praise, which is, you know, great job, brilliant, oh, lovely, oh, thanks so much, or you're amazing, which is nice, but it's not really any use. And you could also say that to anyone. So taking the time to be specific demonstrates to that person that it is about them and not just about something general. And it's really powerful. I'll do this in a workshop and I'll get people to share them with each other. And the atmosphere in the room just changes when people pick up. It's great for workmates. People pick up that bit of paper and go, oh my God, you noticed, you care. That's amazing. I'll keep doing that thing then. I never knew that it mattered that when I came in every Monday morning and asked you how your weekend was. I never knew that was so important for you. I'll keep doing that. So that's a little exercise that is based on appreciation, but steps it a little bit deeper into being affirmation and also gratitude.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really great one. And I like you say, it's that extra step of explaining why that's important for you, what that gives you, which I think is lovely, because it's not just sort of, you know, thanking somebody or being nice to somebody, it's actually explaining the impact they've had on you, which is lovely when people do that. You know, it's lovely to be appreciated, but to understand why that matters to somebody, I think is great. And I think the other point I make about that, and this just might be a me thing, but I'm very good at doing that with people that I don't know that well when I'm sort of building the relationship, and it's like almost once people become like really close, it's almost like I forget to do it because I assume that they know, and it just kind of, again, making this into a habit, something that I'm very mindful that I need to, like all the stuff we're talking about, you need to work at it and build your mastery around it. It's like I'm mindful I need to make sure that I do this for my very close friends, because I probably don't do it anywhere near as much as I should, and you know, I appreciate them probably more than anybody else in my life. So I'm mindful that I need to do it more. And I do it loads with people I hardly know.
Yeah. And I think that can be a really nice way of warming up to the task, actually, is to just do the little everyday ones. Like, you know, the cashier register who smiles and you say, you know, oh, thanks so much for smiling. That's you know, made my morning so much more enjoyable. You know, that's why I come to you and not to the machine, because the machine can't smile. It's those little things, and you do start to get in the habit of what you did, what it meant, the effect it had. It's that combination is really powerful. And yes, to remember to do it to the people who are kind of, you know, at the moment as well, not getting any distance from them. So you forget to point that out to people. It's really powerful.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other thing as well, I mean, I have this discussion with someone in my family, about relationships, and they'll say to me, oh yeah, but you've got good connections, lots of friends, and I'm like, yeah, but I work at this, so it's really important to me, and I need this, and I put a lot of time and effort and energy, and I prioritize. I think the other one for me is to sort of make time and prioritize. So I have a lot of friends. I've lived all over the place in the UK, and I've got friends from different parts of my life that live all over the place, and I might not see them very often, and I can't see them all the time, but what I'll do is I'll make sure that we get a weekend booked together to go to a festival or do something that we both love doing. So we'll have that like little bit of time. It'd be really quality and really energizing, and it will show them that I prioritize them, because I do, because obviously it's that mutual benefit piece. But it's not sort of saying, oh sorry, we haven't caught up for last year, we just haven't got time, because that's kind of really quite damaging, I think, for relationships, to say to someone, I don't have time for you. And when we hear that it isn't that they haven't got time, it's they haven't got time for us, I think. So for me, it's that, don't take it for granted the amount of work that goes into your relationships. It sounds, again, really obvious, but we kind of, I think you need to put that work in. Okay, so we've talked about this, but I'd just be interesting if anyone else has got anything they wanted to kind of contribute. Have we got any comments coming through, Katie, or thoughts from people? Anyone want to share anything? How do they build positive relationships? Like I say, I will look forward and think in my kind of like in my diary. Obviously, at the moment we're distancing, but I'll think, I haven't seen my best friend from school. We've been friends since we were 11 years old, and I love her dearly. She was in Manchester, and we'll a few times a year we'll kind of say, right, we're going to get together. What are we going to do? So we'll get weekends in the diary or whatever it might be to make sure it's not loads of time. I'd love to see loads more, but at least we have those few touch points throughout the year where we get together. So what do you do to build positive relationships? Or any thoughts, any tips?
Nothing coming through the chat as yet.
Got a quiet bunch today. That's okay. We're getting towards time anyway. Mindful, we've got a few minutes left. Anything you wanted to add to that, Justin? What's your top tip other than appreciation?
Well, my top tip is the one we've just talked about, which is, finding ways of expressing our appreciation for the people in our life, and that really goes for work colleagues as well as those close personal relationships, as well as the people, particularly at the moment. I think there's been it must be interesting to be a frontline worker at the moment. I was out walking the dog the other morning, and there's a nurse that lives across. Myself and Emma live on the same street, and there's a nurse that lives opposite. And I found myself, just automatically, it was about 6:30 in the morning, and I was walking back, and she was coming out for work, and I just found myself automatically saying, thank you so much for doing what you do. At the moment, it's made a huge difference to me personally, because my sister-in-law spent 2 weeks in ICU, and thank you. That really makes me feel like the world's a safer place, that we've got people like you doing the job you do, and I wouldn't have said that 2 months ago. And it makes me think, well, who are all those other people that we take for granted, in that we don't. This is the thing you were saying about Emma. These are things that we feel, but we don't express. And actually, the power of another human being expressing that to you is extraordinary. And so I'm wondering who are the other people in our lives who we just forget to say thank you in a meaningful way to. We get into habits. And it's a really nice thing to do, is to spend a little bit of time thinking about those people, even if you don't have a chance to express thanks to all of them. But and then if you can, even better. So I think this thing of appreciation, and also, sorry, this is your point about the love languages, appreciating people in a way that matters to them. So some people aren't words people, right? Some people are going to be like, you're weird talking to me. What is this? I appreciate you. Some people are, you'd like do something for someone, or the people in your life, how they like being expressed to, and sometimes it's worth pushing through that resistance. So like you're saying, I'm going, no, I am going to give you a hug. No, this is going to last for 10 seconds because I love you and I care for you. And then other times it's like, don't go there. Just send them a token for a coffee or something. I don't know. There are so many different ways we can express our appreciation, but that it's a lovely thing to do. It's like the Buddhists say, selfish altruism. You win, they win, everyone wins. The world's a nicer place.
No, I love that, and it's kind of relevant that just before we finish, today is obviously Thursday, so we'll go out and clap the NHS. And I've seen loads of people kind of, you know, getting into political kind of debate about whether we should be doing it or not, and the NHS is a charity. And it's like, I'm not getting into all that. For me, I'm going out on my doorstep clapping for fellow human beings. So I can't thank them all because I don't know who they are. And I'm just going out to say, as one human to another, really appreciate you doing an amazing job. And I know all the people I know that work in the NHS, they're loving it. They're loving the, you know, the people that I'm speaking to anyway, saying, you know, we really appreciate that. It means a lot. And there's been a lot of emotion around it. So I'm going out, it's not about politics for me. It's about from one human to another, say, thank you so much. I massively appreciate what you're doing. So I think, you know, let's all get out there tonight. It's Thursday, isn't it?
Yeah. And Emma, I've just noticed your slide says thank you. So I'd like to thank everyone who's been on this call and has come on the other calls, because I have a fundamental need to share this stuff with other people. And if you weren't there to share it to, I'd be sitting in a room talking to myself, which is no life for a grown man. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come and sit with us for 45 minutes or an hour every week. So thank you from me to all of you.
Yeah, that's a really brilliant way to end today's call. Absolutely. I also thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you making the time. Any questions, as always, just get in touch. We're happy to answer them. Next week, we're going to be talking about engagement, which is, yes, we're obviously very passionate about at People Lab. But have a lovely bank holiday weekend if you have a bank holiday tomorrow. And if not, have a lovely normal weekend. And we will see you all next week. So thank you very much for being here, and hopefully speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.